everyone. Welcome back to the London CND podcast. And we've got a really exciting and very topical conversation today with Courtney. And we're going to be talking about the Together Alliance, which is the coalition that's formed against racism and the far right. And Kevin will be telling us all about that. So, if you're first-time listener to our podcast, welcome. If you've heard us before and you like what you hear, please give us a follow, give us a listen, and recommend us to your friends. Okay, let me introduce our guest. Courtney hails from Wales. After graduating, he became a physics teacher in London, and he began a long career in the NUT, the National Union of Teachers, starting with branch activism and becoming General Secretary in 2016. In the teacher unions merger a year later, he became Joint General Secretary of the National Education Union. And Kevin was also a member of the General Council and Executive Committee of the TUC, the Trades Union Congress. Nowadays, he's acting chair of the Together Alliance, having been the Trade Union Liaison Officer for Stand Up to Racism. Welcome, Kevin, and thank you very much for joining London CND's podcast.
Thank you very much for the invitation, Carol. Great pleasure to be with you.
Okay, let's get on with this really big topic. The Together Alliance is a new and rapidly growing enterprise, much needed in these dark times with reform and the far right growing in Britain and across Europe. Let's start by telling me where it comes from.
Okay, it's a good question. On September the 13th last year, Tommy Robinson, Stephen Yaxley Lennon led a demonstration in London that we think had 150,000 people on it. And at 150,000 people, it's the biggest demonstration ever by the far right in this country, bigger than anything the British Union of Fascists managed in the 20s and 30s, or the National Front in the 70s, or the BNP in the 2000s. No, nothing ever repeats exactly. And I don't think, and I really hope that not all of the 150,000 people on that demonstration were fascists. But Tommy Robinson, I think, is properly described as a fascist, an ex-member of the British National Party, a founder of the EDL. So he was a fascist leading 150,000 people. On that day, I was part of a counter demonstration that was much smaller than his mobilisation, to the extent that we got kettled by the far right. It was a scary moment, really. It was scary for people on the counter mobilisation. But it's not just that physical fear. It's if there's an expression of really far right politics that is being supported by 150,000 people, you have to do something. And part of what you have to do is look and think, well, what we, and by that I mean the broadest definition of our movement, has been doing hasn't stopped the far right growing so far. So we have to think, how can we do better at that? And I think it's important to know that his movement is the far right, because they have a presentation. He presents that demonstration as Unite the Kingdom, which is bizarre and causing division in the kingdom and setting out to. And then their strapline, or their line on their banner at the front, was Stop the Boats. So some people would have been there because they had a concern about illegal migration. I think a massively misplaced concern, and it's not illegal immigration anyway. It's not illegal for somebody to come to the country and seek asylum. But there's that presentation, which was a Tory party slogan, Stop the Boats. But when you look at what the people said who were invited by Tommy Robinson to speak, when you look at what they said from the platform, it was much broader, much deeper, much darker than a concern about small boats. There were hugely Islamophobic statements made. People say a guy called Brian Tamaki, who is from the New Destiny Church in New Zealand, a very right-wing church. He organised a haka on the demonstration. You think, well, that's a bit anti-racist, having a haka. His speech was there should be no non-Christian religions or expression of non-Christian religions whatever in any of our countries. He said, ban the hijab, ban burqas, ban halal food, ban mosques and temples and shrines, ban all of these things. Other people made similar speeches saying that Islam is our enemy. So there was this huge Islamophobic strand. Then there's this strand of a conspiracy theory called the Great Replacement Theory, which is usually got an anti-Semitic coloration. It wasn't said this way at this demonstration for reasons we might go into or not. But where they claim, and Tommy Robinson was part of claiming this on the day, that there is an orchestrated attempt to replace white people in Western countries by people paying or encouraging black and brown people to come here. I say it's often got an anti-Semitic coloration, that because when they say it most often, they say George Soros, big Jewish money is paying black and brown people to come here. So we had the Islamophobia, then this conspiracy theory, which has an anti-Semitic coloration, and then these calls for what they now try and call remigration. Instead of mass deportations, they try and rebrand it as remigration. But this woman, Eva Vladenbroek, she spoke there, saying that that white people are all being damaged by this and calling for remigration. We are generation remigration, she said. So I think it's important to see that this isn't concern about small boats, which is misplaced anyway, but it's not that. It's much bigger, much deeper, much darker than that. So that anybody who thinks, maybe if we stopped them at the small boats, this would go away. It's not true. It's much deeper than that. And I think it's also important to know that while we have defeated Tommy Robinson a couple of times in the past, we defeated the BNP, we defeated the EDL. He stood for election to a European seat. He was humiliated and blames people like Stand Up to Racism for saying that he was a fascist and saying that people didn't vote for him for that reason. We've defeated him in the past. We can defeat him again. But this time he's not just a street thug. He's still a street thug, but he's a street thug supported by the world's richest man. Which sounds like a conspiracy theory from our side, that why would the world's richest man, Elon Musk, be supporting this street thug, Tommy Robinson? But he is. Elon Musk, with a personal wealth of something like $400 billion, is supporting Tommy Robinson. And if you look at his X feed, his Twitter feed, Elon Musk's Twitter feed, the weeks before that demonstration, half of it was about his rockets and half of it was about supporting Tommy Robinson's demonstration and encouraging the Raise the Colours movement of putting up the flag of St. George on, and he's funding that movement as well, of putting flags up around the country too. I mean, people putting them up are not putting them up out of any expression of patriotism. They're putting them up to intimidate their black and brown neighbours.
But like that, it is so clear. It's money versus the majority. That's a really good explanation. Thank you for that. Let's move on, Kevin, to another question, if I may. In a relatively short period of time, there is a huge, long, and very impressively broad list of supporters on your website, from Friends of the Earth to Pax Christi Scotland to Brain and Spinal Injury Centre, Bonnie Down Community Centre. They're just a few that popped up to me when I was scrolling through it. What are you actually hoping to achieve from such a broad alliance?
Well, we were hoping to be broad, but when we started, we weren't that broad. We had a relatively small group of trades unions interested in working together on trying to do something big to counter this new expression of the far right. We had the Palestine movement in its various components involved PSC and Stop the War. And we had just a hint of some NGOs being involved, some charities being involved. We had Care for Calais. But we have grown dramatically, more than 430 organisations at the last count I saw. It's probably more than that by now. And we've reached the point where I think you said in the introduction, I've done some trick. Having been a general secretary, I've been reaching out to other unions, and I was doing that for Stand Up to Racism, now doing it for Together. And now unions that we didn't approach because of lack of time or whatever are now approaching us. So in the last week, the Royal College of Nursing, I think their proper title is, joined the alliance. And in the NGO space, Amnesty International, which is, as you know, such a big international NGO, big in this country, they're big enough to do things on their own. So the idea of them joining an alliance with others, but Amnesty and Greenpeace and Friends of the Earth and Oxfam and War on Want, and then hundreds of local organisations, really exciting that there's going to be a Christian bloc on the demonstration. You mentioned some of the Christians, but the Bishop of Southwark has signed a statement, and there's going to be a big Muslim bloc. I spoke at an iftar event in Tower Hamlets of 200 people who are representative of Muslim organisations, a variety of Muslim organisations, and there'll be a Jewish bloc, and they'll be marching together. We hope that we are showing that there is a majority still in this country that is anti-racist, and that's a majority. We're trying to show that. We think there is an even bigger majority of people who might not consider themselves like actively anti-racist, but certainly don't want to go back to a time when racist violence was such a phenomenon as it was in the 1970s and when Stephen Lawrence was murdered, etc. We think there's a big majority. So one of the tasks we think for Together is to encourage, by being big and vibrant and broad, is to encourage people to think, actually, we are part of a majority. We don't think that's the whole of the task. We want to win back some of those people who are currently flirting with voting reform. And we think this alliance can help do that as well. And so we have plans for after them. It's not just the march. We've got plans for things to do after. We think that breadth is important. We are fighting to keep that breadth together. And we haven't had a divorce yet. So, and I think we're in a good place to keep that together. There's real goodwill between everybody to try and do these things.
I must say, that is, to hear you say these things and to watch the Together Alliance grow warms my heart. I'm sure I'm speaking for tens of thousands of people who feel this way. You said when you were describing the sort of build-up, the decision to have the Together Alliance, you mentioned the Christian right in association with the sort of Israel lobby and other organisations. This has been very frightening. One of the things I think that's concerned people like me who are activists, but not necessarily our central focus, is that having organisations like Stand Up to Racism, important as it is, doesn't actually offer sort of the community as a whole a way of responding. Not everyone wants to take the young child or the elderly mum on a sort of demonstration where there might be fisticuffs with the far right. And it's such a relief, such a tremendous enthusiasm from the community as a whole, which is represented by your list, exactly what you've been saying. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of people in London CND and across the board who are just delighted with this event. The thing I wanted to move on to is the National March coming up on Saturday the 28th. in effect, this is your launch event, isn't it? What's it looking like? And what's your vision for the Together Alliance in the future? You mentioned you've got some plans. You may not want to publish them at this stage, but what's your vision for where it's going?
So we think the demonstration is going to be a great thing to be part of. We think people who can't get there will feel like they're missing out. And in terms of something you said earlier, my children are going to be there with me. They don't always go on demonstrations. They've got children of their own. So my grandchildren are going to be there. And I'd encourage everyone. This is going to be a demonstration of love and hope and unity, as well as opposition to hatred and division. But it is going to be safe, and we think it's going to be big. We have printed more than 750,000 leaflets, and I know they're being distributed all over the place by lots of different sorts of people, and people planning how they get those leaflets out. We've had more than 120 coaches have been booked, and almost all of them filled. We know people are organising tickets on trains as well. Obviously, the London and South East turnout will be so significant in this. I think it will be a great day on the 28th. And we will be asking people on the 28th to commit to do more. And what we're thinking is we need a 4 or 5 year sort of strategy to try and turn things around. We think there are things to do, like the things that Rock Against Racism did during the period of the National Front, of using music to try and connect with youth and to say the music is on the side of people who support diversity. We used to say, I'm old enough that I was just about a little bit involved in the battle with the National Front that the Anti-Nazi League had. I was at a fantastic carnival that some people will know about in Victoria Park in 1978 when The Clash and Sham 69 played. And we were saying that the National Front is no fun. The NF is no fun. So there'll be a strand that is about that. But there's a strand about workplace organisation and a strand about community organisation. We'll be asking people to register to vote and to use their vote, but we'll be trying to organise in workplaces, to organise an argument about the way the world is. And this isn't necessarily how Together says this, although I think nobody would be far from it. I think that during the battle against the National Front, working class people in the UK were having a hard time, but they thought life was going to be better for their children. I think working people, teachers, doctors, everybody is having a hard time at the moment. And a lot of them think life's going to be worse for their children. And that doesn't excuse somebody becoming a racist, but it's sort of the environment in which snake oil salesmen manage to sell snake oil. And I think a lot of people feel that the mainstream, that the two leading parties have not managed to sort these things out. So they feel a sense of despair with Labour. And so some people, I think, might vote reform as, oh, well, let's give another lot a chance, not quite understanding the depth of their racism and actual, in my view, their hostility to working class people in terms of their economic policies. So we want to have a set of discussions that go around that. We want to say to people, yes, there is a problem in housing. There is a problem in our NHS. There is a problem in the cost of living, but migrants aren't to blame for that. And in saying migrants aren't to blame for it, which we think is obviously true, that migrants aren't to blame for those things, it also starts to raise the question of what is to blame then? Why is our society now so incapable of producing enough houses so that your children either can't get on the housing ladder of buying a house and are paying enormous rents to private landlords for so long, and why your mother can't get the hip operation on the NHS for month after month? Why are there such delays? We think it's obvious that migrants are not the cause of those problems. And a lot of the NGOs, and we're talking about how we can best express this, a lot of the component parts of the Alliance would say that there needs to be a fairer society, that there needs to be a different sort of taxation system, so that there is, one way of saying it is, if you want some more money in our society, maybe don't look to the poorest people in our society. They haven't got the money. Let's look to some people who've got the money to see if we can get to start to put our society right. Now, we're not going to be a political party, so we're not going to have an advanced set of ideas about a new taxation system or anything, but there is something about a general feeling that our society is unfair. There are things going wrong, but it's not migrants that are to blame. Let's work together to identify the changes that we do need.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is so exciting to such a broad range of people. I live on an inner London estate, a big estate. It's a poor area. The estate is still a majority of council tenants, despite Thatcher's right to buy and so forth. And one of the things I noticed, this refers back to what you were saying earlier, one of the things I notice, the majority of my neighbours are not political, they're not activists. They read the Mirror, the Mail, and they repeat what they read in the paper. So I'll talk to some of my neighbours and they'll say, oh, it's all this immigration that's making the country poor. Or in the past, they'll say things like that sort of newcomers get housed before we do and my family does. And they say all those things, and then you see them going away and organising for the estate's children to play together. Every colour, every language that exists in London is there. And I have felt, in that environment, I felt really despairing of the fact that racism is so very definitely linked to the sort of demonstrations you were talking about earlier, people who are, protesting that there are asylum hostels in areas that can't cope with them and so on and so forth. And it is such a relief to hear that an organisation is doing something about that, is being conscious about it. And I'm absolutely sure that the sort of neighbours I'm talking about would never say, I am anti-racist, or we should stand up to the right wing, or anything of that sort. But when it comes to seeing what you're putting on the streets on the 28th, I don't think there'll be a great deal of disagreement with the message you're getting over. I feel that this has been an absolutely great podcast because not just the concepts, the intellectual rationale, the enthusiasm is coming from you to all our viewers, and it's even coming to me. I'm usually a little bit more detached about the things I'm talking about, and it's really great and exciting. So what I would like to finish is one sentence from you. We know what organisations can do. They can add their name, the Together Alliance. But what would you most like individuals to do to support you?
Okay, in one sentence, but with two asks. Be on the demonstration on Saturday, the 28th of March, if you possibly can. Ask your friends and your family to come. Ask the person you know with the biggest social circle to come, and then bring their mates. And when you're on that demonstration, listen out for what we're asking about next steps and join up to be part of the next steps that we want people to take. We can stop the growth of these damaging narratives, which will do nothing to solve any problem in our society. They'll just make things worse. But to do that, we have to act together. We have to act broadly. We have to act together. There's a chance to do it. Take that chance. Be on the demonstration if you can, or support it online if you can't be there, and encourage your friends and family to come, and then take the next steps. That would be.
It's great. A very long sentence, but well worth saying. Kevin Courtney, thank you very much indeed for making time to talk about this new and very exciting venture. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Carol. Been a great pleasure. Thanks a lot.